The first letter showed up on a Tuesday afternoon. It was one of those plain white HOA envelopes with bold black lettering across the top. I opened it, thinking it was some boring announcement about landscaping or trash pickup schedules. But instead, it was a notice of violation of $500 fine. Why? According to the HOA, my boat, the one I kept tied to the small dock behind my house, was a violation of community aesthetics. I laughed at first. I thought, this has to be a mistake. My house sits on the edge of a large lake, a lake that's been in my family for decades. My grandfather built that dock. I grew up fishing off it, swimming in those waters, and later saving up for the boat I now own. That lake wasn't just water, it was my heritage, my peace of mind, my slice of freedom. But the HOA didn't care. The letter said the boat was an unauthorized structure, and if I didn't remove it within 10 days, they would fine me daily until I complied. And just like that, my quiet life on the lake turned into a war zone. Now, let me introduce you to the real problem. Her name is Karen. She lives 2 houses down from me, and if you've ever had a neighbor who thinks they own the entire street, you already know what kind of person she is. She patrols the neighborhood with her phone in hand, snapping photos of people's lawns, trash cans, and cars. If she doesn't like something, she reports it either to the HOA or the cops. And guess who filed the complaint about my boat? Yep. Karen. I found out at the next HOA meeting, where she stood up and announced, in her shrillest voice, "This unsightly boat is lowering our property values. It's not fair to the rest of us who actually care about the community's appearance." I raised my hand calmly. "Karen, with all due respect, my boat is behind my house, on my dock, on the lake. How exactly is it lowering your property values?" Her face twisted like she'd just eaten a lemon. "Because it's visible from across the lake. Every time I take my evening walk, I have to see it." I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even my next-door neighbor. She had to go out of her way to see my boat. The HOA president, a guy named Martin who loved hearing himself talk, sided with her. Community rules are rules. If a resident feels something violates our standards, we must enforce them. I asked to see this rule, and sure enough, in the thick binder of HOA bylaws, there was a vague clause about unsightly personal property visible from shared community spaces. It was written so loosely they could apply it to anything. And they were applying it to me. The next few weeks were a nightmare. I kept getting letters. The fines piled up. $500 became $1,500, then $3,000. Karen strutted around like she'd won the lottery, pointing at my dock whenever people passed by. One day, I caught her leaning over my fence, taking pictures of my yard. "Karen!" I snapped. "Get off my property." She smirked. "It's not your property when it's ruining the whole neighborhood." I swear, my blood boiled. It got worse. She called the cops on me. One evening, 2 officers showed up at my door. They looked uncomfortable. "Sir," one of them said, "we got a call about an unauthorized vessel and potential safety hazards on your dock." I blinked. "A safety hazard? It's a fishing boat." They walked down, looked at the boat, shrugged, and left. "Yeah, you're fine. Just seems like someone's wasting our time." Of course, Karen stood on her porch the whole time, arms crossed, glaring at me like she was trying to melt me with her eyes. By the 3rd month, the HOA escalated their threats. I received a formal notice: if I didn't remove the boat, they would take me to court. Court! Over my own boat. On my own dock. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the letter. For the first time, I felt cornered. They had money, lawyers, and the support of the nosiest neighbor in the state. And me? I was just one guy who wanted to live in peace. But what they didn't realize was that I had a card they could never beat. Because while they were busy nitpicking rules and waving fines in my face, they had no idea who really owned the lake. The very next morning, I dug into my old family records. See, this lake wasn't just some community feature. My grandfather bought it in the 1960s, long before the HOA even existed. Over time, developers built houses around it, and eventually, the HOA formed to maintain the neighborhood. But the lake itself? It was never theirs. It was ours. I still had the deed. Clear as day, lakefront property, full water rights, and ownership of the waterway. In other words, not only did they have no authority over my boat, but technically, every time an HOA member used the lake, they were using my property. I contacted a lawyer. We drafted a letter. It wasn't just a response, it was a warning. The letter stated: 1. The HOA had no jurisdiction over the lake. 2. Any fines issued against me were invalid. 3. If they continued harassing me, I would pursue legal damages. 4. And here's the kicker: unless the HOA dropped everything immediately, I would begin restricting community access to the lake: fishing, boating, swimming, everything. My lawyer delivered the letter directly to the HOA board. The reaction was priceless. At the next meeting, Martin, the HOA president, looked pale. Karen, for once, sat silent. He cleared his throat. After reviewing the documents, it seems there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I said, leaning back in my chair. You fined me thousands of dollars and threatened me with court. Karen finally exploded. This isn't fair. He can't just own the whole lake. That's ridiculous. I pulled out the deed and slid it across the table. Actually, Karen, that's exactly what I can do. She turned beet red. The room fell silent. Within a week, the HOA dropped all fines and removed the violation from my record. They even sent a written apology, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. But I wasn't done. Remember how they said my boat was unsightly? Well, guess what? From that day forward, I decided only I could authorize any boats on the lake. No more HOA lake days. No more fishing tournaments. If they wanted to enjoy the water, they had to go through me. The same people who tried to bully me ended up groveling just to dip their toes in my lake. And Karen? Oh, Karen lost it. She threw a tantrum at the next meeting, screaming about how it wasn't fair. People actually laughed at her. For once, the neighborhood saw her for what she really was: a nosy, entitled busybody who wanted control but had none. Now, my boat sits proudly on the dock. I take it out whenever I want. Every time I pass by the houses, I can feel the HOA board watching, silently regretting the day they decided to pick a fight they couldn't win. And Karen? She avoids me now. Won't even make eye contact. Good. Because here's the truth: sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting, or fighting, or even suing. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply reminding people who really owns the water they swim in. Have you ever had an HOA or nosy neighbor try to control your life? What would you have done if you owned the entire lake? Drop your stories in the comments, I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more American HOA stories.